Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode,
One more.
no, we've got Benjamin B.
Yes, sir. I am here.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whether that be Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play Music, Apple Podcast. I think I already said that one. We're on all of them, and thank you for tuning in on YouTube. If in fact you find this content helpful, you can always reach out to us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. Right, Ben?
Yes.
I had adventure group this morning, Ben.
What'd you do?
Volleyball.
Beach volleyball.
Beach volleyball.
It
As
is
Caesar would
hot.
say volleyball.
Volleyball.
Yeah.
Caesar is so important, our team here.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't know, Caesar is one of our techs, and he's been with us now for 6 years, maybe longer, 7 years,
Definitely longer.
8 years. I don't
8
know.
years, probably.
Yeah, 8 years. But he's an integral person amongst our organization.
We call him Fez.
From that 70s show?
Yeah, foreign exchange student. Heavy accent. He's hilarious. One of the happiest people I think I've ever met. Carefree.
Yeah, he's awesome. Hey, quick question, though, for those of you that are watching and listening. Well, if you're listening, this means nothing to you. But if you're watching on YouTube, we're going to try a different setup here because the old setup was a little weird with the table and the whole deal. So I got this set up here now, and I got some different microphones with some boom arms and stuff, and I'm trying to make it look more of like a production, you know, Ben? More professional, I suppose, is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Where did the table go? That's my concern right
It's
now.
in the other room.
Okay.
Yeah. But give us your feedback. Anything that we can improve, anything that you think is, something that maybe, hey, you should move this sign there. You should make these colors this, or whatever it is. Let us know. Send us an email again, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. Right, Ben?
Yes.
Okay. We are continuing our step study. I know it's been a few episodes since we've brought up the step study, and today we are on step 11. 11, Ben. Step 11 is sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God, praying only for knowledge of His will and the power to carry that out.
Good job.
And I did not have to read that out of the book. I just knew it. Let me do a quick shout out too before we get started. Jen, I know you are listening. We just spoke, and it was good talking to you. Definitely appreciate you giving the feedback, and glad that you're enjoying the content, and looking forward to doing that Zoom session with you and the moms group. It sounds like that you have going on in Maryland, so looking forward to that. What do you got, Ben, on step 11?
Unfortunately, Tom, you got step 11 a little wrong.
Son of a biscuit.
You left out a key part. Squiggly spaghetti letters. As we understood him.
Okay, all right, whatever. Go ahead.
Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him. Yeah. Praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. You're close.
I mean, I understand my God, so
Perfect.
go ahead.
All right. Where to start with this one? So you're comfortable with the whole God thing. I'm actually glad it came up that way.
Yeah.
Were you like that from the beginning?
So I was raised a Christian.
Okay.
So for me, concept of a higher power wasn't anything out of the ordinary. It wasn't something that I really wrestled with. I've always had the idea and the understanding that there is something out there greater than me, and I was raised a Christian. So for me, Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. Of course, that is part of being a Christian. Now, where I went astray, I suppose, was I I guess I always had the belief system. I just didn't have the faith. Or maybe I had the faith. I just wasn't really practicing it. I wasn't a practicing Christian. I didn't go to church. I didn't, live a spiritually filled life, if that makes any sense.
So I'm glad it came up this way, because there's two types of people that find themselves in early recovery, for the most part. I mean, there's anomalies here and there, but people either come in with no issue with prayer and meditation as far as the willingness to do it. And then there's folks like me who come in and I'm under the impression that this is like some hocus pocus thing, and I'm going to pray and look up to the heavens and say some prayer and ask God for something, and all of a sudden, poof, my addiction is fixed. And I'm a guy that just couldn't buy into that. Because for me, if there was a God, he certainly hadn't done anything for me. Look, my life's in shambles. Where is God's mercy? Look at what's happened. And after going through steps, I now realize that's on me. However, one of the first things that happens when we get a sponsor, at least was for me, is my sponsor asked me on the very first introduction, do you pray? And one of the things that I hear in the rooms all the time as through shares is, well, did you pray on it? And that used to drive me nuts. And my issue with it was I didn't really have an understanding of prayer. And let me throw this out there too, because I want to briefly touch on this. The Big Book has a line in it that says, while his religious convictions were very good, they did not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience. This is just my experience, so hopefully not taken in bad taste. But as far as sponsees go, some of the sponsees that I've struggled with the most, as far as them staying sober, are the ones that come in with very strong religious convictions. And for lack of a better way to put it, I think that they're so strong in their current beliefs that they don't become open-minded. Otherwise, they would have stayed sober to begin with. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of times with people that are new to recovery or new to sobriety that I think when you say open-minded to different experiences and stuff like that, they would rather just go to church and get sober through the church. Mm-hmm. And not saying that can't happen. It can. I've met plenty of people that have been able to get sober through their local church or through Celebrate Recovery or whatever the case is. And that's great. But where I do draw an issue with it is for those people that are so dogmatic about it, I suppose, mm-hmm. maybe that's the right word, that they're not open to go and do a 12-step fellowship because all I need is my God.
Yep.
And that's where I see things go astray because, listen, the church, even though, my church, I fully believe it's filled with the Holy Spirit and where, but at the core of it, the people that attend this church is what makes it a church. Just like a 12-step meeting, the people that attend that meeting is what makes that meeting. So you could be involved in a church that doesn't have a very strong recovery program. There's a lot of churches down here, though, that they do have because recovery is so prevalent down here, a lot of people travel here from across the country to get sober. A lot of the churches do have some sort of particular recovery program involved, which is good because it draws attention to addiction and stuff like that. But if you're from backwoods Alabama somewhere or Kentucky or back in the middle of the sticks, that might not be available at the church. And, you could be left there stuck alone mm-hmm. with just your God. And that's a tough place to be because I've been with just God before when I'm puking, as I'm hovering the porcelain gods and I'm praying to God, if you just get me through this. I know I drank too much. I know I did way too much cocaine. I probably shouldn't have ate those Xanax. I'm telling you, if you get me through this, I won't do it again. And I got through it, and I did it again.
So I would say from a knowledge perspective for me, I'm super excited about covering this step because I want to throw it out there that I'm a guy that wanted nothing to do with prayer or meditation. And today I'm super passionate about it based off of the fact that I have more of an understanding of the message that the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous was putting in front of me, basically. So again, I want to come back to this thing that I meet my sponsor. My sponsor asked me if I pray. And I'm like, oh, of course I pray, right? Because I'm full of crap. But the reality of the situation is I had no idea what that meant. I had gone to Sunday school as a kid a few times, but that was the extent of it. So there's this misconception in 12-step programs that we have to abide by some sort of, like you were saying, dogma, where I love how the Big Book says it, because the beautiful thing about the Big Book, it doesn't tell you what to believe in, it just tells you to believe. And again, like, I thought that prayer was this big hocus pocus thing, and I'd go into a meeting and be like, oh God, I'm having severe cravings today, and someone's like, well, did you pray? And I understand that taking the action to pray can help relieve it somewhat temporarily, but I needed to dive a little deeper. I needed some good reason. So, with that being said, I forgot to mention this earlier. Faith without works is dead. When we go back to believing in a God, you have to be willing to do the work also behind it. So, here's the thing about prayer, as far as the Big Book is concerned and the way that I understand it. So, I'm just going to read straight from the book. It works if we have the proper attitude and work at it. It would be easy to be vague about this matter, yet we believe we can make some definite and valuable suggestions. So, the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous gives us 2 prayers on page 86, and I believe that these are vital in early recovery. So, it jumps into, this is literally how the first prayer starts, in the paragraph that's at the top of 86. When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Notice, Tom, that the Big Book did not start off by saying, Jesus, God, Allah, our Father. It literally jumps into, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken. We covered step 10 in the last episode, going through the steps. I like to call this step 10 for dummies. That's what I love about step 11. What do you think about that prayer that I just read out of the Big Book, Tom?
Can you read it one more time, please?
One more time? When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Do we owe an apology? Have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Were we kind and loving toward all? What could we have done better? Were we thinking of ourselves most of the time, or were we thinking of what we could do for others, of what we could pack into the stream of life? But we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. After making our review, we ask God's forgiveness and inquire what corrective measures should be taken.
So my initial thought is that it is a much more in-depth version of step 10.
Absolutely.
And it is when we retire at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, I'm going to review my day and look at, overall those areas in which you just spoke of and, reflect on them all.
Exactly. So there's a spot earlier chapters of the Big Book that refers to we had to be rid of the things which have been blocking us. Because the whole thing in 12-step programs is we're looking to find a power greater than ourselves, a higher power, quote unquote. If I have to be rid of the things which are blocking me, what blocks me? My bad behavior, generally speaking. I get myself in situations where I end up angry, resentful, hurt, full of anxiety, whatever the case is. So I want to point out that the Big Book's suggestion, because that's what it says, for prayer is basically that we take inventory of our behavior for the day. Because remember, in the back of the book, it also, in Appendix 2, it says that we must have a personality change sufficient to overcome our alcoholism. So my sponsor understood that I didn't want anything to do with God in the beginning. And that's when he looked at me and said, Ben, you don't have a drinking problem. You got a personality problem. Let's just start working on that. And that ties back to we had to be rid of the things which have been blocking us. Once my behavior starts to improve, my personality becomes better, all of a sudden, I become more open-minded. I start being able to take in these ideas of a power greater than myself. And it was only after being rid of the things which have been blocking me that I can honestly say, like, oh, I get it now.
So what, I mean, to the average person, they're going to read that though, and it's distinctly says through prayer and meditation.
Mm-hmm.
The average person looks at prayer as praying to God. What is a simplistic way to put that? Because I mean, again, to the average person, it sounds like, okay, well, I'm what? So instead of me praying, I just need to think about my day.
So again, where the big book tells you to believe, not what to believe in. The beautiful thing about this program is you can take any prior beliefs that you have and you can bring them with you, or you can cast them out. So I'll throw it out there like this. What I see happen, and this is just my experience off of working with sponsees who are comfortable with prayer from the get-go, they'll pray to their God. Dear God, thank you for a beautiful day. Please continue to show me blessings in my life and help me to stay sober. Yes. Is that beneficial? I do believe so. It's a positive mindset. It's asking for help outside of yourself, to a power greater than yourself. Like, I get that. But here's the thing. If I continue on that track, Ben being a severe alcoholic and junkie, where that is as far as I go for me with prayer, at some point, when I start seeking answers from God, how long does it take before God's voice starts to sound an awful lot like Ben's? However, I don't pick up on it. All of a sudden, I can't differentiate the two. I think I'm praying to God, but what I'm really doing is praying selfishly, where what we have to do is become of service to others. That's what, I'll throw it out there, but I'm pretty sure that most religions out there, God's intention is for service to others. Mm-hmm. Loving mankind, help your brother and sister. We're all children of a loving God. Help thy brothers and sisters, basically. So when we go back through like these questions, these suggestions that should, in my opinion, be included in your prayer, things like, have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? Again, this comes back to, I'm bringing another human being into this. I'm bringing God and another human being. Not one or the other, both. I believe for me, utilizing all these resources, the fellowship, God, is what's so important. Because again, we've talked about on past podcasts, you can't spot self-deception by yourself. And I reiterate, a lot of times I start praying and all of a sudden my prayer is very selfish. And it'll tell us too that we can only pray for ourselves if it means usefulness for others.
So it sounds like in this 11th step, though, through the prayers and everything, you're really in a prayer type of format. You're doing what this says.
Let me read it. I kind of paraphrased it, but I'll find it right here. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why. And so what this is doing is it's laying out a program in these suggestions for prayer so that our prayer does not become selfish. Because when we become selfish, that is no longer God's will, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would think so.
So being Ben, the good manipulative drug addict, how oftentimes prior to having these steps in my life did I use prayer for selfish ends? And you used the example earlier. You were talking about the porcelain god and hovering over the toilet. When I get arrested for my DUI and I'm sitting in jail and all of a sudden I got this foxhole prayer, God, if you'll just get me out of this one, I'll be a good boy.
Yeah.
Back to selfish. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So, and I'll throw it out there too, for people that might not believe in a higher power. You can't cry out to something you don't believe in. Going back to these foxhole prayer thing. How many times have we been in a situation where all of a sudden we're in big trouble, and one time in our life we're like, oh God, if you just get me out of this one. And then as soon as we're out of that trouble and those consequences, we forget we ever said that. Happens all the time.
So go on to the meditation part of it now.
So this is just me. I'm not huge on meditation for my personal life. I'm more of a prayer through the big book guy. Meditation, though, is about sitting quietly waiting for answers. And the way that translates for me is when I find myself in a situation, some sort of confrontation, if you will, whether it be confrontation that just comes up in life. Maybe I caused it, maybe I didn't, maybe it's just life on life's terms. For me, meditation means sitting quietly and taking no action, so to speak, until the answers reveal themselves and come. Because a lot of times when I try to come up with answers to fix problems, generally speaking, if I sit back for a second, I find out it's better for me to take no action in some circumstances and just wait for things to play out.
Well, it goes back to the saying, pause when agitated.
Exactly. Well said.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which a lot of people have issues doing. And I know I referenced my marriage, and anybody out there that's married can relate to this. And if you can't, then you're lying to yourself. But no marriage is perfect. And my wife and I, we get into arguments or heated discussions or whatever the case is. And I have found one of the best things that we can do as a couple when we do get into these arguments and whatnot is to take a time out, to pause, to separate ourselves for a period of time. That could be 10 minutes. That could be the rest of the day. And then come back later, emotions are calm, so on and so forth, and we have a much more productive conversation.
I want to touch on it since you brought up the pause when agitated. This is where it comes from. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. I highlighted this next part. We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. That last part, foolish decisions. When I find myself under some anxiety or nervousness or whatever the case is, I make some foolish decisions and I say some foolish things. And that's where the meditation part comes in for me. Don't do something stupid. Don't make the situation worse, Ben. Pause. Come back at it tomorrow. Maybe next week. Is it really that big of a deal right this second?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good.
I also want to touch on, there's a couple points on step 11. The other prayer, I mentioned there was two. The one on page 86 says, on awakening, these are the suggestions for prayer. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead. We consider our plans for the day. Before we begin, we ask God to direct our thinking, especially asking that it be divorced from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. Under these conditions, we can employ our mental faculties with assurance. After all, God gave us brains to use. Our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. So it makes suggestions for prayer in the morning to basically plan out your day. Have you ever... What's your feelings when an alcoholic or a drug addict in early recovery wakes up and has zero plans for the day?
Idle hands is the devil's workshop.
Yep. And then you smoke the devil's lettuce, as Tom would put it.
That's right.
And Guy like me is smoking crack a few minutes later. But we really have to take the time to plan out our day. And that's the other suggestion for prayer. Making sure that our day is full of things that are going to be good for our recovery, good for mankind, full of love. I want to point something out, and this is my big book. If you can see it on YouTube here, it's falling apart. But my sponsor had me take the word God because I was so hard-headed. If you look at it, Tom, I scratched it out and wrote the word love. So, for instance, we ask love to direct my thinking. For after all, the power of love gave us brains to use. You know, I was so, my mind was snapped shut so much against the word God because I was so angry at God, if there was a God, for my situation, that my sponsor was open-minded enough to allow me to have my own experience and gave me suggestions like replacing the word God with love. I was like, you know what? I can do that. And that's where my prayer started, at a very simple level. And I want to throw it out there. When I get a sponsee, and this is the way it was done for me, when I get a sponsee, the first thing that I have them do is go to page 86. I have them send me a screenshot every night. I basically have them take that when we retire at night inventory / prayer. I have them answer all those questions and send it to me every single night. A couple things happen. You know, A, it gives them the opportunity to bring up anything that they feel like they should bring up. B, it lays some groundwork for our discussions, because it's kind of awkward. You know, when you get a new sponsor, if there's no format on what you're supposed to be talking about, have you ever called your sponsor in the beginning and you're like, "Hi, this is awkward.
Yeah, hello.
Are you going to lead this?
Hey, man.
Yeah. Today was good. Got another 24. All the cliches. I'm just going to let go and let God, Tom.
It's hot today.
Yeah. And they're, okay, good talking to you, sponsor. Have a good day. Here's the thing. Like, when I got my sponsees, and my sponsor did this for me, when we send that inventory to each other every night, basically what ends up happening is we have something to build off of. And going back to this, we need a personality change sufficient to overcome our alcoholism and our drug addiction. I begin to see patterns right away. It gives a sponsee something to work on as far as action right away. So there's like a homework assignment every single night right there, and it comes straight out of the big book. So in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with it. We jump right into prayer from the get-go, and I point out page 86, and what ends up happening generally is, for instance, those questions, were we resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Most sponsees, 98% of the time, are like, nope, 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 nope. I wasn't any of those things. Have I kept something to myself which should be discussed with another person at once? Nope. Was I afraid? Nope. Etc. Over the course of time, though, they'll call me when they have a problem. Like earlier in the morning, hey, man, I'm facing this issue. And then later that night, guess what? That inventory says, nope. No fear, no selfishness. I'm not afraid. I'm like, wait a minute. Didn't you call me this morning about such and such situation or this coworker that pissed you off? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, shouldn't that be on your inventory? Because you're looking for corrective measures. And what ends up happening over the course of time is it starts to create awareness. My sponsees, and I was the same way, we are completely unaware because we're not looking. That is the importance of taking inventory, and in my opinion, step 11 is just another opportunity to take a thorough inventory of yourself on a daily basis, and then ask God for corrective measures. I needed guidance from a sponsor in the beginning for those corrective measures, but what ended up happening over the course of time, as I got more sobriety under my belt, rather than me doing this inventory and calling my sponsor and say, hey, what do I do about this situation? I started calling my sponsor and said, hey, I have this situation. Here's what I think I should do. What do you think about that? Am I thinking correctly? Guess what? Because I'm starting to develop God consciousness. I'm starting to be able to use my own brain. I'm starting to test the waters with no longer necessarily bouncing every thought and idea off my sponsor. God gave me a brain to use. I get to start using it throughout the course of these steps.
That was pretty good, Ben.
Was it?
Yeah.
There is so much about step 11. I just,
Well, I think we did a good job covering it, and obviously, it's if you're new to the steps and this is something that you're just starting to embark on, this can be a little bit ways down the road. As far as time frame goes, we don't know. That's going to be between you and your sponsor and whatever they deem necessary and whatever however willing you are, how fast you want to do this and stuff like that. But rest assured, you will get there, and it's an integral part of the process. And then I feel like you want to say something else.
There's a line in here that I highlighted. I put a star by. It's the top of the last paragraph of this chapter, and it's the end of step 11. And I use this on our clients all the time.
What's it say?
It says, we alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. Point blank, I had to be told by my sponsor that I am undisciplined.
Yeah.
Let's call it what it is. And this goes back to faith without works is dead. It drives me crazy when we have clients here. And it drives me crazy in the sense that I feel bad for them because they're just unaware. They're not doing the work, and they just think that they're going to stay sober off of some miracle.
Right.
You have to do this work. You have to become aware. In step 12, we'll talk about the next step, come when the time comes, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. Awakening equates to awareness. We have to become more self-aware. We have to develop this quote-unquote God consciousness. And I want to make it very clear to the listeners, because my intention, Tom, if I had to lay down my intention with this episode, it's to really hit home the fact to people who don't want anything to do with God that there is a way for you to pray. Focus on the personality change sufficient to overcome your alcoholism, and ask yourself, how am I going to have a personality change if I'm not taking a daily inventory of myself? Where I found God, Tom, I can't tell you. For me, I think it was in step 12. I'd say that as part of my story. But the truth of the matter is I can't pinpoint exactly when that happened. But it happened.
Right. Couldn't have said it better myself, Ben.
It's been a ride, Tom.
You're heading off to Minnesota tomorrow.
I am. I'll be back July 5th. I fly back July 4th, but I'll be back to the office July 5th.
You gonna have some cheese?
No, I'm going up there on this diet.
Wait, Minnesota's not the cheese? That's
Wisconsin is, but Minnesota's still got good cheese. Minnesota has really good food in general as far as meats and cheeses.
Yeah.
Dude, see, down in
You're
Florida,
not going to get to have any of it.
I could probably squeeze some meats in there somehow. Lean meats. So, you ever notice in Florida, and this drives me crazy, there's no, butcher shops and meat markets?
Oh, yeah, no.
Dude, we got, big grocery stores, but if you go to Minnesota, you know how there's, the little mom-and-pop meat markets everywhere? Yeah. They have that in PA?
Oh, yeah.
Out by where you were in Quakertown, USA?
Yeah.
I miss that. You could pull over into some random meat market and get the best beef jerky and what are the beef and cheddar brats and all that stuff, dude. We don't have that down here.
No, we don't have any of that. Yeah.
It's a bummer.
All right. Well, thanks, Ben. Thanks for taking us through step 11. And listen, if that is something that resonated with you, congratulations. And you're on your way to step 12. And that's where you get to start helping people. And yeah, it's a pretty cool process. So any final thoughts, Ben?
No, it was
pretty fun.
Yeah. I like step 11. I'm a fan. I just think that it was such a big change for me. Pivotal change.
Moment.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, what we're trying to do is help you turn your mess. It looks like I'm pointing right at your head, Ben. Turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.